Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this time, I wanted to talk to you about Mars entering the zodiac sign of Gemini on June 28th. Mars, as you may already know, is named after the Roman god of war. And in astrology, Mars is pretty much regarded as a malefic. That is a planet that brings nothing but war and controversy and argument and anger wherever it goes. It crushes underneath its feet anything that gets in its way. And Mars has a bit of a nasty reputation, and a nasty reputation pretty much bent around creating trouble and delighting in it. But this isn't really what Mars does in an astrological chart. So what Mars will do in an astrological chart is put you at the front of the line. Mars's job is to, as I said, get you what you want. And so what it's going to do is make you the top priority. It's going to guard you, it's going to defend you, and it's going to pursue anything that you want, whether it's a flavor of ice cream, or a certain income, or someone that you're in love with, or a job or a position that you really desire. Mars is going to make sure, to the best of its ability, that you get it. Now, there are different ways of getting things. You could march forward and say, I want that, and demand it right away. You could maybe sheepishly ask if someone could give you something. You can feel very embroiled by different passions and anger and frustration. You want what you want, but you don't think that you're able to get it. And so you're going to say that you don't want what you want, but that makes you angry because you should want what you want. And that can maybe turn you into a mix of all kinds of emotions and anxieties. Or you can be a charmer. You can simply say, I would love that. Would you mind giving that to me? And the other person, enamored of your charms, may very well say, sure, you can have it. Can I get you 8 more just like it? So there are different ways that Mars is going to go after what it wants in astrology, as I said, because there are 12 different signs. So there are 12 different ways of pursuing what you want in astrology. So what is Mars in Gemini like? How are you going to go and get what you want when Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Gemini? Well, Gemini, as we know, is the zodiac sign of the twins. Okay, Gemini is an air sign, and air signs, the air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, rule over relationships. And so Gemini is the first of the 3 air signs, followed by Libra and then Aquarius. And basically, we have 3 stages of relationship when we examine these 3 signs in successive order. Gemini rules over sibling relationships, which makes perfect sense because Gemini is the zodiac sign of the twins. Libra rules over spousal relationships. It's your spouse, your life partner. But Libra also rules over business relationships or collaborations. Any kind of relationship which is ruled over by a contract falls within the province of Libra. And finally, Aquarius. Aquarius is society. It's you having a place in society and society having an impression on you. Aquarians believe that society is only as good as the people in it. So the idea that a society is made up of all these different people who have all these different wants and desires and have to find some way to coordinate with one another, this is pretty much the story of Aquarius. So when you have Mars in Gemini, for instance, basically it's that sibling relationship. It could be a brother or sister. Even if you didn't have a sibling, it might have been your playmate at school or a next door neighbor that you hung out with. Okay, so basically those early relationships that you form in life with someone other than your parents, a sibling or a friend, is going to be ruled by the zodiac sign of Gemini. And so when you have Mars in Gemini, Mars, as I said before, wants something. And if it sees something that it wants, it's going to go ahead and go for it, ask for it, fight for it, achieve it, win it. This is what Mars is going to do. But when you have Mars in Gemini, for instance, and because siblings can also lend themselves to something like sibling rivalry, which is very much connected with Gemini and the zodiac sign of Gemini, well, if you have Mars in Gemini, the only reason why you might want something is because somebody else wanted it first. So in other words, you could have cared less about a flavor of ice cream or winning a prize or something along those lines. But if someone close to you wanted it, you might say to yourself, well, that must be something very special, and I want it too. And so then what happens after that is some sort of competition or some sort of rivalry, some sort of contest over the other person who wants the very same thing that you wanted. Again, as I said, you might not have wanted it at first, but it becomes a thing of value because someone close to you values it, and you see that that must be something special, and then you're going to go and get it to the best of your ability. So this contesting or competing with a friend or a sibling for something that you both want has been essentially going on since childhood. Maybe you beat out your brother for a spot on the football team. Might not have meant much of anything to you, but if your brother was like, oh, I really want to get this position on the football team, you might have been like, oh, well, that sounds like a really good thing. I think I want that position too. And so maybe what you did was beat out your brother for it. Or maybe you competed with your sister for the same boyfriend. Or maybe you accompanied a friend to a school audition for a play and you were there for moral support. And somehow you found yourself getting up and auditioning after your friend did, and maybe even doing a better job and getting the part yourself. So what I mean to say about this is that Mars in Gemini has a knack for emerging with other people's prizes in hand. And the funny thing is, once you've won it, well, all the fun's left. And you are like, okay, I got this prize, this dumb prize, but it's not really a big deal. And that's because the fun was in competing for the prize. So sometimes when someone has Mars and Gemini in their chart, winning is disappointing. If anything, you would hand the prize back to the person you got it from, or maybe even over to the friend or the sibling that you beat out. But what's happened is that the damage has already been done. Feelings have been hurt, and they're looking at you like, I can't believe you auditioned for the same role and got it when you said that you weren't even interested in it in the first place. So taking things that other people want isn't really great, all right? Even if you are better in the role in the school play, or you're better at that position in football, or you and the boyfriend make a better match, even if you're a better match or you're better suited for this, it's not winning you any friends. It's not making people trust you or like you or feel like they can take you to an audition or job interview for moral support for fear that you're going to walk away with the very thing that they're trying to get. However, if you were to set your sights on taking the things that the people you don't like want, like, for instance, outsmarting a competitor or foiling a rival or running circles around an opponent, then you would be a lot happier because it keeps the game going. The other person might be mad or frustrated or thwarted or angry at you, but it doesn't matter because it's someone that you don't like. It's an opponent, it's a rival, it's a bully, it's someone that you think is so full of themselves or something like that. So you delight in making them the target of your prank. You delight in foiling them at any turn. And so that's why I would say if you could move that Mars and Gemini in the direction of taking something away from someone you don't like, and maybe even delighting in mocking them over it, then that would probably go over a lot better. It would certainly make more people in your life applaud your efforts. And this is why I call Mars and Gemini the Robin Hood Mars, all right? If you remember Robin Hood, he steals from the rich and he gives to the poor. Robin Hood is stealing. That's not a good thing, but he's stealing from people who didn't come by their money fairly, or who are full of themselves, or gluttonous, or greedy, or horrible landlords, or oppressed people, or something along those lines. And so what Robin Hood does is that he steals from the rich and he gives to the poor, and he makes a friend of the regular person. Now, if you were to direct your Mars and Gemini in this direction, you would not only fare a lot better, but you would certainly be quite popular and applauded for your efforts. Time that Mars is in Gemini, which is from June 28th to August 11th, this is going to be a wonderful time for Mars. The reason why it's going to be a wonderful time for Mars is that there's hardly any sort of planet that's going to thwart it, that's going to hold it back, that's going to frustrate or challenge it in any way. In fact, on July 4th, Mars in Gemini will form a conjunction to Uranus at 3 degrees Gemini. And on that very same day, Mars in Gemini will form a sextile to Neptune in the zodiac sign of Aries. And this is good because Mars rules the zodiac sign of Aries. So there are two major aspects taking place involving modern planets that are really going to fan the fire of Mars. It's really going to support Mars. It's really going to get Mars up and going and feeling like Mars can accomplish almost anything. Add to the fact that on July 5th, Mars will form a trine to Pluto in Aquarius, and that feeling of being unstoppable is going to be very, very powerful. Now, this will all be rounded out on July 26th with Mars forming a sextile to Saturn in the zodiac sign of Aries, the zodiac sign that Mars rules. So what you have happening here is basically a shot of adrenaline, you punch in the arm of this boost in energy and speed because Mars is in Gemini with its conjunction to Uranus and sextile to Neptune on July 4th, and then it's trine to Pluto on July 5th. But then sometimes things can be easy come, easy go. Like all of a sudden you feel this rush of energy and you feel like you can accomplish anything. And maybe a day or two later, your energy flags and your spirits dip and you feel like, I can't really maintain this or keep this going. That's what's nice about the Mars-Saturn sextile that's taking place on July 26th. Mars-Saturn sextile, what that does is that Saturn, because it's going to be working with Mars, through a sextile, and secondly, through rulership, Saturn is going to give Mars the stamina. It's going to give it the endurance to go the distance. Mars is really good at beginning things, and Mars is really good at abruptly ending things, but Mars isn't really good at the going through something. Not going through something like a challenge or an ordeal. Mars is very good at that. Mars isn't really good at seeing something all the way through to the end. In other words, if it begins a project or a venture, it's not always good at completing it, particularly when it's in a zodiac sign like Gemini. Gemini is wonderful in terms of outsmarting things and figuring out things and getting people to do what you want them to do in a very pleasant way without the person even suspecting that they've been maybe manipulated. I mean, Gemini is really good at that. That's because Gemini likes to play games and mind games. And that has a little bit of a negative connotation, and it really shouldn't, because if someone leaves an encounter with Gemini laughing and chuckling as a result, then what's the harm? Or that's at least the way that Gemini sees it. So Mars in Gemini often can go about the things that it wants, but not in a rough or confrontational or horrible way. Let's go back to Robin Hood and the Merry Men, right? Robin Hood's merry men come together because they're outlaws and things like this, but they meet one another through besting one another. They have wrestling fights, or they outsmart, or they challenge or make fun in some sort of way. So many of the merry men begin in this kind of contesting or battling with one another relationship, but when the battle is over, when the game is over, when the wrestling with one another on a rolling log over a river or whatever is over, they emerge out of the water or out of the mud laughing because they fought the good fight and I gave as good as you got and things along those lines, and they end up slapping each other on the back and laughing and being merry men. So the fighting and the contesting also brings out the camaraderie. And this is something that's very Mars, and it's something that's really Mars in Gemini. It's very particular to that placement. So what can happen here with the part of Gemini that can begin something and not really end it, because Geminis have a tendency to be drawn to the next bright, shiny object. They don't always have the best follow-through. What happens when Mars forms a sextile to Saturn on July 26th is that Saturn bestows the follow-through. It says you're going to go the distance with this. Saturn's going to show how this course of action can be turned to a game or a series of challenges, something that really keeps your interest and that you score points as you best one opponent after another. You face one challenge after another. And so you will feel very, very encouraged and very confident. And this is something that Saturn can give. Instead of Saturn being a planet of tests and standing in your way and not letting you pass and maybe even undermining your best efforts, Saturn becomes like one of the merry men in your astrological chart, battling you, but also applauding you and being, "Hail, good fellow, that was a contest well met, and let's go the distance together and be besties." So that's the sort of disposition that Saturn can take when it changes its attitude by planetary aspect. So let's go ahead and talk about Mars in Gemini and how it's going to impact each of the 12 zodiac signs over the next 6 to 6.5 weeks.
Hi friends, I'm just jumping in here to let you know that Amanda Walsh's new book, Life by the Stars, is out now. This story is her deeply personal memoir about a 16-year journey of how she ultimately found Astrology Hub. And woven throughout the story is astrologer's notes by Natasha Alter that detail the astrological transits she was going through as the story unfolds. It is now available on Amazon and other major retailers, but when you buy direct through lifebythestars.com, you have access to immersive experiences, exciting book packages, and the exclusive audiobook narrated by Natasha and Amanda themselves. So if you want to learn more about Life by the Stars, get a signed edition while supplies last, you can head over to lifebythestars.com or find it on Amazon or wherever you get books. All right, now back to the episode.
Now, if you were born under the zodiac sign of Aries or you have Aries rising, during this period of time that Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Gemini, you are going to be meeting people who are more on your level, so to speak. They're more on the same level or the same playing field that you are on. All right, so maybe this might be a time when you're, I don't know, joining an AP class, or you're competing on a team where the players are just as good as you, if not better. Remember that Gemini, the zodiac sign of the twins, is also the zodiac sign of sibling rivalry, which is often mixed up in that first relationship that we form with a sibling at an early age. So rivalry and competition is something that Aries and Gemini share. All right, so this idea of your ruling planet Mars moving through Gemini is going to put you with people who are basically your contemporary as opponents. So basically what Mars in Gemini is going to do is put you in the company of people who are just as good, if not better, than you. Because the idea is to give you that edge, to make you more competitive, to make you smarter, to make you stronger, to make you more wily, to really bring your best effort to the situation. If you perform better than other people on a team, for instance, you can become complacent. Yeah, you might be the leader, you might be the best one on the team, but there's no one that really challenges you. And so for all of your talent and skill, and you may have a considerable amount of talent and skill, if it's not being challenged, it's not growing. It can move into a rut. It can stay static. It can stay at one level. So during this time that ruling planet Mars is going through Gemini, this is getting you to bring your best game, okay, to a situation and getting you to see that you're maybe perhaps not as good as you thought you were. Now, some people might find that a humbling experience or maybe even a humiliating one. But being an Aries or an Aries rising, it's going to be something that really excites you. It's something that's going to really enliven you. It's going to be like, finally, I've met my match, or finally, I've met someone who's better than me. Wow, okay, now I've got something to live up to, okay, which is what people born under Aries or Aries rising want. They want that challenge. That challenge gets them to grow, to try harder, harder. And Mars is about getting what you want and exerting your strength and exerting your will. So you might feel intimidated at first by meeting this new group of people or joining this new team and realizing that you might not be as good as they are at first, but that will certainly turn into something that's very enlivening and something that's very encouraging. Gemini forms a sextile to Aries after all. Gemini is an air sign. Aries is a fire sign. And these two elements get along with one another. And when you bring air and fire together, they have a tendency to empower. They have a tendency to enliven. And so this is what the energy is going to do for you. So where you might have felt intimidated at first, what will happen is that you will grow more confident as time passes. But another thing to keep in mind with Mars traveling through the zodiac sign of Gemini is that things aren't always fun and games. When your ruling planet is traveling through the sign of the twins, you can tend to spar and feud like a boxing kangaroo. In other words, everything might be a fight or a fracas. And so you might be punching at different people with your hands or punching at different people with your feet or even your tail or something along those lines. Everything may be a challenge and you might see it as fun. Okay, you might see it as like, this is great. And so this might be very engaging and even very exhilarating. And fun can take on different forms of expression when Mars is going through Gemini. I remember, oh my God, in grade school, one of the fun things to do evidently was to grab a kid by their head and give them a nookie or something like that. Rub their head and that's fun. Okay, so that might be an example. I don't think anyone's going to grab you and start rubbing your head or anything like that, but that can be fun. Or pranks can be fun, or rib poking can be fun. There can be that edge, that boisterousness that comes out when you combine the energies of Gemini and Aries. You want to be careful when Mars is being overstimulated, shall we say, by a conjunction to Uranus and a sextile to Neptune and a trine to Mars, is that you might be sensitive to the fact of like, have you taken things too far? Okay, have you gone too far with something? Rib poking might be in fun, or arguing and debating might be in fun for you, but other people might not see it that way, especially authority figures who may be the butt of your jokes. Aries and Gemini both share a kind of making fun of authority figures type of thing. Aries doesn't really make fun of an authority figure, but Aries has an edge about like, who's this person giving the orders? Is it someone that I can trust, i.e. follow and obey? Or is it someone who is posing or doesn't deserve this position of authority and needs to be exposed or thrown out of this? They're not a proper person to be following. That can be an Aries thing with authority. Aries is a soldier, it's a follower, but it's always testing the person who's in charge. It doesn't just blindly obey. You combine that with Gemini's playing the fool or the prankster or the jokester, and what you can have is a very lighthearted or maybe even casual regard towards authority. But what can come out when Mars is going through Gemini, and remember Mars is your ruling planet, is that the joke can have a kind of malicious side to it. Okay, in other words, you might make fun of someone who's in a position of power and people might laugh, and then you might continue to make fun of them. Or you might pull a prank on someone. Everyone was delighted with how inventive you were, and this might get you to go even a little further. Now, one could say, okay, it's like a classroom. You're being prompted on or encouraged by everyone who's laughing, but you also want to pay attention to your own motive during this period of time. Are you poking fun at someone? Is that prank really as harmless as you say or pretend it is? Or are you using fun and games to mark a very real hostility that you may feel towards this person? Maybe there's an envy. Maybe there's a feeling of competitiveness. Maybe you just don't like this person. And so you're hiding behind the humor when in fact you might be doing something that's very malicious, that's meant to harm, that's meant to sting. So that's something that you want to keep in mind for the period of time that Mars is going through Gemini. If it's a joke is a joke and fun is fun, as Auntie sings and Peter Grimes, then that's okay. But if there's something underneath to it that's meant to really sting or maybe even hurt or humiliate someone else, that's something that you really need to take a look at. Because if that's at play, then the joke isn't a joke and fun isn't fun. And you're using that to make someone else feel bad. And so it's a good idea to own that if that's what's going on and to stop doing it, basically, or tell the person that you're feeling angry at that you're feeling angry, not to hide behind something else. So these are the things to keep in mind during the period of time that your ruling planet Mars is traveling through Gemini. And Mars enters Gemini, as I said before, on June 28th, and it leaves Gemini and enters Cancer on August 11th. If you're born under Taurus, or you have Taurus rising, Mars traveling through the zodiac sign of Gemini isn't going to be the most comfortable period of time for you. And the reason for that is because you don't like change for change's sake. Perhaps the biggest difference between Taurus and Gemini is that Taurus is a fixed sign. It likes to do things a certain way and then repeat it. Because with consistency, one builds. You perfect what it is that you're doing. With consistency, you keep doing something so that you're seen as reliable and stable, so that you're promoted or valued, or you create a product that you can create more of and people want to buy more of it. So people born under Taurus who have Taurus rising have a lot invested in stability. They have a lot invested in consistency. Basically, the thinking is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But when you've got Gemini energy that's going on in your life, either maybe because you have planets in Gemini or you have a planet transiting through the zodiac sign of Gemini, which is what's going on June 28th when Mars enters Gemini, then you're getting hit with all of this change for change's sake. Gemini energy likes to change things up. Indeed, people born under Gemini or have Gemini rising often change their furniture around every 3 weeks or maybe even 3 months if they really have patience. So there's this idea of changing the surroundings, changing the environment, changing the way that things are done, because you never know. You might discover a better way of doing it, which is a legitimate thought and probably even something that is desirable. But you see it as change for change's sake. People born under Gemini or Gemini rising, or let's just say Gemini energy, because you can be besties with someone born under Gemini or Gemini rising. But let's say a Gemini energy, which likes or espouses, values change for change's sake, is something that you find kind of looking for trouble. As I said, your thinking is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if you're just changing something, are you changing something because you really believe it's going to be better? Or are you changing something because you're bored or restless? Or it might be fun if we just changed it, which to a Taurus or a Taurus rising is a nightmare. You've already been through 8 years of Uranus, the planet of revolution and change, going through your sign. And you've been a real good sport about it. I mean, you've also been transformed by it as a result, but let's face it, you've also been a good sport about it. You've endured the revolution and the change and done the best that you could to adapt or evolve and grow through it. But in the end, now that Uranus is gone, you're looking forward to going back to your consistent, stable Taurus existence. So with this idea of Mars going through the zodiac sign of Gemini and making changes just for maybe the fun of it, this is something that you're not really into. It's not something that you're going to really appreciate. But being a Taurus or Taurus rising, you learned a while ago how to deal with these people who just want to change things for change's sake. You've learned how to smile and nod and in all the right places, to look interested when superiors share their suggestions and analyses, and to be like, wow, that's a great idea when someone's like, let's workshop ideas in a group on how to improve. You're the first one to go, right, that sounds really good. That sounds really, really wonderful. And so you've learned that if you make them feel like they've been heard by you and that you're really taking into consideration what they have to say, you know that over a period of time that they'll probably lose interest, that they won't even remember the suggestion that they were making, or they weren't really committed to workshopping that idea. And so what you've learned with Uranus having gone through your sign and a Taurus living in a world of change is that if you make someone feel heard and appreciated and you yes them, chances are 9 times out of 10 that they're going to lose interest and move on to something else. And meanwhile, you don't have to argue with them. You don't have to fight with them. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to point out what was stupid or not thought about in their ideas. You don't have to express what you're really feeling, which is probably great irritation. What you do is that you rely on the fact that they're going to lose interest and move on to something else. And once they've lost interest and moved on to something else, even if you have changed a routine or the way that something is done, you can very quietly and without calling too much attention to yourself, go ahead and change things back to the way that they had been done before. Now, Mars is going to be moving through your solar house over the next 6 to 6.5 weeks. And this is going to deal with your finances and the way that you make money and even manage it, perhaps. And ironically, what's going to happen during this period of time, and perhaps it is a result of Uranus having been in your zodiac sign for 8 years, is that there might be something about your work environment that becomes a bit more hustle and bustle. It becomes busier, it becomes more hectic and things like this. And where your typical response before would have been tried to slow things down or put a lid on it or tell someone, I'm not in your hurry, what you might find is that you're actually thriving in this excitable environment, that you're feeling very valued, that you're feeling very recognized. And that's not because people have signed on to you putting the brakes on things. What it is because things are so hectic and there's such a hustle and bustle, people would be turning to you as the voice of reason, that you might be the calm in the storm, or you might be someone that they're really trying to win your approval, or trying to get your say-so, or getting your pat on the back and saying that things are being done in a good fashion, in a good way. So actually, it might be this period of time when you're going against the beat, which is this accelerated beat, and you're moving more slowly than everyone else. It might be more kind of like, wow, what's going on with that Taurus rising who's moving at a slower rate than everyone else? Maybe he or she is someone that I can ask for advice, or maybe they know something that I don't know, or something along those lines. So this is something in which your stability during this period of time is going to be seen as something that's valuable, something that's admirable, not because you're telling people what to do or you're putting the brakes on things, but because you're this center in the storm. You're someone who's going to come across as being knowing, so everyone else is going to want your approval or want to understand the way that you see things. So be the stable one over the next 6.5 weeks, okay, while Mars is going through Gemini. But what I also want you to do is to embrace the Gemini quality of an open mind. What I would urge and encourage you to do is to keep an open mind. Not all of these changes are for change's sake. Some of these changes may truly be innovative and truly inventive and truly an improvement on the way that things have been done before. And if you keep an open mind, what you may discover is that some of these wacky ideas might actually have merit. There might be something to it that makes them valuable. What you also want to be wary of during this period of time that Mars is going through Gemini is property disputes. All right. Taurus is very territorial. The second house, which is the house of finances, can also be territorial. And so whenever Mars is going through a house, it can bring fracases and disputes and struggles and fights and battles in that particular area of the chart. So what you want to do is key into the air sensibility. Instead of snorting and standing your ground and getting angry, what you want to do is find a way to turn confrontations into conversations. And you will not only succeed in keeping the peace, but you could also come out ahead in all of your financial dealings. If you're born under Gemini or you have Gemini rising, you're going to feel like you can best any opponent you face when Mars is traveling through your zodiac sign. Your mind is faster, your tongue is sharper, and you can poke holes in people's arguments and make fun of them, like Bugs Bunny on steroids. Now, the other thing that's going to be happening during this period of time is that your natural contrariness, for contrariness' sake, is going to be accentuated. You're going to love to play the devil's advocate, and you may even take the opposite side of an argument just for the fun of it. Now, what you need to keep in mind here, which is a little bit similar to what I was saying to people born under Aries or who have Aries rising before, but what you want to keep in mind during this period of time is pretty similar to what I was saying to people who are born under Aries or who have Aries rising. You don't want to take things too far. What you see as bantering and having great fun with a play on words could be hurting other people's feelings, which means that you need to be able to read the room, especially on July 4th when Mars is forming a conjunction to incendiary Uranus in your own zodiac sign. That might lead you to go overboard, to go too far. What you thought was fun and all in the spirit of one-upmanship may be seen as being very callous, very cold, very inappropriate, and basically, I don't know how else to put it, not funny. And all the resistance and trying to explain yourself isn't going to solve or salvage that situation. Your ability to find fault, which is going to be doubled, tripled, quadrupled during this period of time that Mars is going through your zodiac sign, can also be redirected so that you can apply it towards detecting when you've gone too far. How can you tell when you've gone too far? Going too far is when you tell a joke that followed a joke that followed another joke, and people went from laughing to looking at you silently, okay? That's when you know that you've gone too far. Going too far is what starts out as fun, ends up taking on a bit of a malicious edge to it. That is going too far. You can also tell when you've gone too far when people don't want to play with you anymore, or even when they wind up going and siding with your enemy. That's another sign of having taken things too far. So no one's trying to spoil your fun. In fact, I would want to encourage you to have fun. I mean, one of the most delightful things about Gemini is their ability to break the ice, to poke fun, but also bring laughter and brevity to a situation, and to get grumpy countenances to break out into a smile. That's one of the most lovely qualities about Gemini. But when it goes too far, when the fun turns into rib poking and maybe something a little bit more malicious, then that's where you have to be able to dial it down and to be aware that there are feelings that are being hurt and to be sensitive in that way. That said, this period of time with Mars going through Gemini, this is fantastic for buying, selling, and wheeling, dealing, all those things that people born under Gemini and Gemini rising love to do. Everything is accelerated. So you're making deals or you're buying and selling at an accelerated pace. You may even have different deals or different transactions going on at the same time, or where You might have been on a slow track. Suddenly you're on the fast track. Maybe you grasp certain ideas very quickly right now. Maybe you have a mental breakthrough. You were struggling with a concept and suddenly it makes sense to you right now. And not only does it make sense to you right now, you know how to use it and to put it into practice immediately. All of these things are things that can happen when Mars is going through your zodiac sign, because Mars accelerates, it speeds things up. Yet, what you also want to keep in mind is that life on fast forward can lead to misjudging situations, or maybe not even giving them a chance. So in other words, if you're moving at an accelerated pace, you may have an impatience with something that takes a lot of time. You might be like, well, all these other things that I'm doing are going on really, really quickly. This should too. And you might abandon it or leave it or see it as being of little, if any, value during this period of time. And that's where the momentum of your life, the acceleration of your life, could lead you to misjudge the value of certain contacts or associations or situations where you walk out on something or you just skip it or delete it or toss it to one side and you miss out on what it truly could have done for you. And that's because Mars is going to accelerate everything and maybe even make you a bit impatient. If you can remember, as you're moving through this fast pace, this 6.5 weeks that Mars is traveling through your zodiac sign, if you can remember that some things need more time to unfold on their own, then you can allow for that without having to reject it or abandon it. You can just say, okay, these are the things that I'm focusing on right now, and the stuff that needs more time to unfold, I'm just going to leave it alone and let it unfold. And if you go and do that, this period of time, you can enjoy the Mars acceleration so that when Mars, for instance, I don't know, goes into Cancer, which will be on August 11th, and things slow down again, you can maybe go back and check out something that you were letting develop on its own. And you may find that what it's developed into is something that's very valuable and precious. If you're born under Cancer or you have Cancer rising, this period of time when Mars is in Gemini can be a bit challenging for you. I guess what I need to do is ask you, how many people are you fighting with these days or not talking to? If it's more than 3, then you may have a problem. Now, the reason why I want to caution you about this is because Mars, named after the Roman god of war, is traveling through the 12th house of your solar horoscope. This is a very sensitive angle of the astrological chart. It's associated with secret enemies, self-undoing, and patterns of behavior that aren't really acting in your own best interests. Patterns of behavior which may have quite a past or a history to them. So what you want to do during this period of time is really examine your close working relationships and your close friendships and even your sibling relationships, because there's something that's going on here that's essentially coming out of the past and it's affecting you in your present. That's because the 12th house in astrology is also associated to epigenetics. That can be the idea of certain familial patterns and even wounds or hurts that have been passed down the family intergenerationally. So we're not only talking about perhaps your own childhood, where sibling relationships, and if you didn't have a sibling, relationships with playmates, may have had a very strong and even wounding effect on you. Maybe you were rejected by siblings, or you tried to make friends in kindergarten and nobody wanted to play with you, or they made fun of you. These things don't go away, no matter how many years separate you from that experience. And because they're basically holed up in your 12th house, and your 12th house is basically the closet where the family skeletons are kept, it can also be the closet where your own pains and wounds and anxieties are kept. Things that happened long ago, and that set a pattern of behavior in your life. This is something that I've come to discover through reading for clients that the 12th house can really house. It's not just the past through the different generations of the family, which can shape behavior, right? But it's also can also be your own childhood, particularly when we're dealing with the zodiac sign of Gemini, which has so much to do with the way that we form relationships as children. As children, we learn things like how to play. Do you play fair? Do you play for keeps? Are you a sore winner? Are you a sore loser? Do you want to get back at the person who beat you at something? Or do you have a more graceful way of playing and it's not a big deal and you don't really understand why everyone's getting so upset? All of these things are going to be set up with Gemini type of energy. Gemini energy affects that part of our psyche. And so with Mars and Gemini at this particular angle by transit, it could be bringing up these patterns of exchanges. How did a sibling act when they won? How did a sibling act when you won? How did you react when you lost at something or when you won something? Did you rub someone's nose in it or was your nose rubbed in it? All of these things are going to be areas of sensitivity now that Mars is going through your psychic closet and messing around with the way that things have been ordered and organized there. It's really going to come across as maybe things that trigger you. You may be brusque or short-tempered, or something gets you to fly off the handle, but it may also carry a strong emotional quality to it. If you were an air sign dealing with this type of thing, there would be more of an ability to conceptualize or to distance, but because you're Cancer rising, you're going to have a very strong emotional response to it. And then because we're dealing with Gemini, you're not going to like that you have a strong emotional response to it. You're going to feel like it shouldn't be a big deal and you're going to want to make it smaller or trivialize it. But then that Cancer energy is going to rush forward and say, no, it is a big deal and it is important and it's not going to be trivialized. So you can see where this can get a bit complicated for you, both intellectually and emotionally. So what you want to ask yourself, what you want to do here is review relationship patterns with siblings. For instance, is there something that needs to be settled with a brother or a sister? Is this spilling over into your other relationships? In other words, was the way that you were treated by a brother or sister in the family, is this something that spills over into your relationships where you form relationships with people who treat you the same way, or where you get to treat them the way that that brother or sister treated you because you're like getting back at the brother and sister in some sort of way? What might be an easier way to think of it? Okay, let's set up this idea. Do you choose friends whom you can dominate? And is that something that you do in friendships? And are you going through a period of time right now with these friends where they don't like it? And they're expressing it, or they're being Marsy, and they're saying, I'm sick and tired of you doing it, and I'm over it, and I don't know if I want to be friends with you anymore. Is that something that could be going on? Or do you, let's go with the opposite direction. Do you choose friends who outshine you in some way? And do you resent it? Does it make you feel competitive, or does it make you feel disrespected in some sort of way? And is this resentment clouding your relations and getting in the way of appraising a situation in a more friendly type of way? So this is stuff that can come up when Mars is traveling through this part of the solar chart. And so that's why it's always a good idea to check in with Mars when it's traveling through your blind spot, which is basically what this zodiac sign is to you. Any sign that's next to you on the zodiacal wheel, in this case, on one side you've got Gemini and on the other side you have Leo, is a potential blind spot for you, something that you don't really see, something that you don't really understand. I mean, you know it's there, it's something that's familiar, but you may not recognize it in a present tense sort way. And so when you have Mars in a blind spot, it's just like, well, if you're driving a car on the freeway and there's a car in your blind spot, you want to turn around and look, because if you don't, you might change lanes and crash into this car. So this is something to keep in mind when Mars is here. And I think that if you can keep it in mind and to treat these interactions more curiously, more in a Gemini vein, which is like, wow, that was weird. Why is that going on? Instead of like, I resent this person, has been going on since I was the age of 3. If you could be like, whoa, like I really got carried away there. Or, whoa, why did I let that person dominate me? And why is that going on? And why am I putting up with that? If you can almost see it dispassionately, but also with a bit of curiosity and perhaps even whimsy, then what can happen here while Mars is like cleaning out your closet with its transit through the solar 12th house, what can happen here is that you can begin to recognize patterns. And when you recognize a pattern or a narrative, then you can change it. You can get out ahead of it. You can say, wow, that's really reminded me of what happened when I was younger. Or, wow, I'm still playing into this pattern where I give the other person all this authority and power over me. Let's change that. That doesn't mean that you get mad and retaliate or whatever back. What it means is that you can turn it into a game. Almost like, what would happen if I played this card instead of that card? What would happen if I threw the ball overhand instead of underhand? You're just changing the way that you play with that information. If you can do that, not only will it be revelatory and lead you in constructive ways to settle these past disputes or these behavioral patterns that aren't working in your favor, not only will it help you to basically exercise those things from your life, but it will also prevent you from planting the seeds to your own self-undoing. What can happen when Mars is in the 12th house is that it can bring out that self-undoing, what we call self-sabotaging behavior, because that self-sabotaging behavior can be based on anger or shame. And so it's the kind of thing that once it gets triggered, it takes on a snowball effect. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The more people that you fight with, it's like a bar brawl or something like that. When you're in the center going, who wants a piece of this? And that's why I was asking you, are you fighting with more than 3 people? Because if you are, that's a moment to stop, look, and listen sort of thing. But the 12th house isn't just a house where these dreadful things happen. The 12th house can bring us face to face with things that are challenging, self-sabotaging or self-undoing, but that's also the way that you turn it around. We live in a society that's like, oh, I don't do that. I just go ahead and do it. And then that can become self-undoing, or you trip into something that you were escaping. Whereas if you can say, this isn't my best moment, or this seems to be a pattern in my life where I fight with people, and you go back and discover what that origin is, you have a chance to change it. And that's where the awareness comes from. That's where the rising of consciousness comes from. And that's one of the great gifts that the 12th house can give. And certainly when you combine the curiosity and the diligence of Mars in Gemini to get to the bottom of what it is and to find a better way of doing things, this is something that can only reward you in the end. If you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising, you're going to absolutely love this period of time that Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Gemini. It's going to be wonderful for you. And the reason it's going to be so wonderful for you is because Gemini is an air sign, Leo is a fire sign, and air signs and fire signs naturally sextile one another. They naturally get along. They augment or encourage one another. Now, that's not without their differences. The sextile is not the same thing as a trine. A trine is unconditional support between planets, because when a planet trines another planet, that means that they share the same element. They can be in different zodiac signs, but they share the same element. And so there's unconditional support. If you want to see a movie, the other planet says, yeah, let's go see it, maybe even pays for it. So that's what you get with a trine. But with a sextile, there can be a difference of opinion. Or I want to back you up unconditionally, but I've got this question that I have that I just really have to bring it out. And the other person is like, sure, go ahead, bring it out. Oh, that's interesting. So there's a conversational quality that takes place with sextiles. And this is something that Gemini is very good at. Gemini is very conversational. And when we get to the idea of anything being conversational, which is an exchange of information, this is a strong point with Geminis. Geminis are wonderful at this. Geminis are actually really, really good at discussing problems and issues. they can have a way of making you feel like they were part of that too, or maybe it's not a big deal, or now that we're talking about it, things are great. And that's because Gemini is an air sign, and air signs believe in the talking cure. If you have a problem, talk about it, get it off your chest. That way the other person can see what you're saying. They might agree with it, they might not agree with it. But if you've got this conversation going, this friendship that's going, there is a need on both sides, a need from both parties to make things better. This is what happens with a sextile. And as I said before, Gemini is very conversational. This is the zodiac sign that breaks the ice. This was the kid in preschool who went to everyone in the class and introduced themselves by saying something flattering or by introducing a fun fact or maybe even playing a game. This is a beautiful way that Gemini socialize and get people to get along with one another. So what's going to be happening during this time that Mars is traveling through Gemini is that this is going to be a time of chance meetings and lucky coincidences, things that Gemini rules over. Remember when I was talking about breaking the ice and getting along with people? These chance meetings are going to be with people that can do something for you or who want to do something for you. Or maybe you meet someone that you've been dying to meet and just, you happen to run into them at the grocery store. This is the period of time when that's going to be happening. And then lucky coincidences are very much something that are connected to Mercury, which is the ruling planet of Gemini. This is also going to be a good time for windows of opportunity to open just when a door has closed. This is a fortunate period when you'll be meeting the right people at the right time, thanks to Mars in Gemini, forming a sextile to Neptune in the zodiac sign of Aries. This is doubly important and doubly good for you, not only because of the sextile that you have, Leo to Gemini, but also because the sextile to Neptune in Aries triggers the trine of Neptune in Aries to your own sign of Leo. So you're getting all of the conversational attributes that I talked about before, but now we're also getting the trine because Mars, being the ruler of Neptune in Aries, activates the Neptune in Aries, and it activates that trine energy. So this is why the doors are opening. This is why people want to help you to help yourself. This is why people may even pay for it. I mean, I don't think it's going to go that far. It might. I'm not saying no, but a trine energy facilitates things. It reminds me of that story that they used to tell about J.P. Morgan, where he would be taking a taxi down Fifth Avenue. And whenever they heard that J.P. Morgan was taking his taxi down Fifth Avenue, they would arrange it so all the lights turned green so that he could go from his home down to Wall Street without having to make a single stop. Okay, this is what trines do. They turn all the lights green. They facilitate your efforts so that you can achieve the things that you want to achieve. And again, this is a wonderful thing. In fact, what could you complain about? Probably nothing. Well, there is one catch, and that has to do with being a Leo or a Leo rising. And that catch really deals with Mars. What it is that these good things are happening. The doors are being opened, introductions are being made, but it will be up to you to follow through on them. Now, this gets to something about Leo that Leos aren't always happy about talking about. Leos, people born under Leo or Leo rising, because of the solar energy, often expect good things to come to them. So in other words, you expect good things to come to you. If someone's like, hey, I know someone who can get you in the door, you're like, great, here's my phone number or my email address. It doesn't occur to you that maybe you should ask for this person's contact information and that you should go ahead and make the contact yourself. You know, Leo or Leo rising people can sometimes expect other people to do that job for them. But we're dealing with Mars here, and Mars doesn't wait on someone else to do things for it. Mars is like, you do it, okay? I'm setting this up. You can have these good things in your life. You said you wanted them. Now you have to follow through. You have to go ahead and do it. So you will need to chase after some of these lucky breaks that I'm talking about in order to make something of them. But what's nice is that it won't be a struggle and it won't be drawn out or anything along those lines. Gemini energy is quick and short, so time is not only of the essence, but things will also be done very quickly once you put your mind and heart to them. If you're born under Virgo or you have Virgo rising, this period of time when Mars is moving through the zodiac sign of Gemini is going to be challenging for you. Mars is going to be crossing over the highest part of your solar horoscope, which is called the midheaven, or the 10th house in astrology. And what can happen when you have Mars here is that on one hand, it can stoke the ambition, the drive that you have naturally in your own chart, but it may also stoke the sense of threat that someone in a position of power may have regarding you. In other words, you may feel very driven and very ambitious right now, and you might be catching the attention of a superior or someone who's higher up than you, and that person might not like that you're being so ambitious or you're being so driven. This could be someone who is an opponent in some way, and so this person may then take on that kind of a stance with you. They may be suppressing you in some way or misdirecting you in some way or making your life more difficult by heaping more demands on you. Or it may be someone who you like and who likes you. And maybe you used to have this mentor-student relationship, something along those lines. And now the person feels like you've gotten what they used to say, too big for your britches, that you're no longer the student and that maybe now you're full of yourself or you're getting reckless, and this may be based on more on that person's projection of insecurity onto you. You've grown, you've mastered things. It's fine when you're being mentored, but when you start to master things, if the mentor isn't secure or confident in themselves, they can feel like you're now becoming a threat, or that you don't appreciate all the things that they did for you, or they're not getting the respect from you that they used to get before. They might even become a bit touchy. So you can imagine the sort of awkward positions that these can create. This feeling that you're driven, you want to rise to the highest that you can be and be the best that you can be, and that this is triggering a sense of insecurity, or you even becoming a threat to someone who is above you. Now, if that were the only thing that was going on, then that would be straightforward. But we have another added element, which is that the person who is above you may be someone who's become an obstacle. Not just an obstacle to your success, for the reasons that I just described, but they might have become an obstacle or a liability because maybe they're out of their element. Maybe they're not as good as they used to be. Maybe they've become an obstruction to people rising to places of prominence. They are getting in the way, and they might even be costing a company, or maybe even costing your family in some regard, in terms of having to always show respect to someone who feels like you should show it to them because they're older than you and you should show this kind of respect. So it might be something that's really getting on your nerves or even wearing you down. And so here, this might create an internal struggle in you. On one hand, being born under Virgo or having Virgo rising, it is in your nature to be of service. You want to help people to help themselves. And you have a very tender feeling for people who need help. And so you want to salvage the situation. You want to help this person to be themselves. So you might want to help a parent who doesn't really know what they're doing or isn't keeping up with the times. Or you might want to help a client whose ideas are retrograde and are working against the good that you are trying to do. And again, this help might be something that they respond to as being condescending, or who are you to think that you could help me? I'm the person who raised you up, or I'm the person who raised you as a child, or I'm the person who put you where you are right now, today. So this might be causing a lot of conflict, a lot of guilt. And as we all know, guilt is anger of a sort. Guilt is either repressed anger, or guilt can trigger anger. And being Virgo, you can feel guilty about these sorts of things. Now, typically, you wouldn't challenge this. Typically, a Virgo or Virgo rising has a great respect for authority. It doesn't mean that you're going to do everything that the authority says. You're born under Mercury. You'll find a way to get around it, or you'll find a way to sell the authority on an idea that you have and make them feel like they came up with it. I mean, Virgos are very good at getting their way through indirect means, but with Mars here at the top of your chart, you are going to have to take a stand and maybe challenge this person. It's not going to be solved by you salvaging the situation or propping up the person in place. In fact, if anything, there's a distinct possibility that the situation could worsen if you were to allow it to continue as is. So we're probably talking about a supervisor who's not keeping up, or a parent whose ideas are now running counter to the household or the people that were raised by this parent. Or it could just be a parent who's decided to be even more extra snarky and recalcitrant or something along those lines. Or someone that you're trying to help but isn't like getting it. They're kind of like, but I thought you liked me. They're making things personal and you're trying to and they might not be suited to a position of authority. And the fact that you are better suited might be making this even more awkward. I mean, this is what Mars can do. So what you want to do is that you want to talk to this person honestly. Mars is in Gemini, so putting things in a straightforward fashion is what Mars in Gemini is going to do. It's going to be transparent. Air signs believe in that transparency. And so you want to talk to this person, but you also want to talk to this person in the way that you would want someone to talk to you if your positions were reversed. Or you want to talk to this person in the way that you would want someone to talk to you if you were in their shoes. And this is the best part of Gemini. Well, there's so many wonderful things about Gemini, but this is one of the best parts of Gemini, I should say, which is this conversation, this ability to talk to someone. And you have that too. Both Virgo and Gemini are ruled by Mercury. We know Mercury is the messenger of the gods. And so this is why Mercury rules over communications and the way that we message one another. But on a deeper level, Mercury was also known in ancient Greece as the companion to man. Mercury was the god who helped you to get from here to there by giving directions or showing you how to cross that path, or that there's a secret access if you know the right combination, and making that combination available to you. So Mercury didn't move you from one place to another. Mercury showed you how you could get from one place to another, a companion to man, where you had to go and worship a god in a shrine or a sacred grove or a faraway place or a throne room. You could bump into Mercury on the street because Mercury was often on his way to take care of business or to deliver a message or something along those lines. So this idea of talking to a person as a companion in a conversational way, this is something that Geminis can do, which is really quite lovely and something that is available for you to do right now with Mars traveling through Gemini. And the other good thing about Mars in Gemini is that it's going to give you the courage to say what needs to be said in a way that's friendly, but also gets to the point. As a Virgo, sometimes you can avoid these conversations, or you can maybe come across it too abrupt or brusque. And Gemini has a way of being very friendly about it and dialing it down and making it more casual and not a big deal. And that's something which you really want when you're delivering this kind of information, that someone may not be able to continue in a position of authority that they have had before. And so your willingness to talk to this person as a peer, to talk to this person showing respect, but also indicating that this person is getting in the way of things and needs to make room or leave or abdicate or resign or let someone else take over the reins, your willingness to tell it like it is, and to tell it like it is in a friendly yet purposeful way, could make and will most likely make all the difference. If you're born under Libra or you have Libra rising, Mars, traveling through the zodiac sign of Gemini, is going to bring a resolve the likes of which you haven't experienced in a very long time. Now, this is interesting because Mars in Gemini isn't exactly famous for resolve. Mars in Gemini wants to act and it wants to do, but when it comes to resolve, not so much so. It wants to act in the moment, it wants to be in the moment, and if it finds an action that might be even more fun to do or advantageous or a better thing to do, it will drop the action that it was doing and move on to something else. So there could be that kind of quality with the Mars in Gemini. But when you put Mars in Gemini in trine to you by zodiac sign, then Mars in Gemini becomes more resolved. Now, a trine energy is a facilitating energy. This is a unconditional support type of energy. Trines describe relationships between planets that are in different zodiac signs, but they share the same element. For instance, Gemini is an air sign, just like Libra is an air sign. So Mars in Gemini, an air sign, is going to form a trine to you, Libra, by sign. Another actor in this trine is going to be Pluto in the zodiac sign of Aquarius, which is an air sign. So essentially what's happening here is that with Mars's entrance into Gemini, there's a kind of grand trine in air that's being formed in the heavens above you right now. And so what this grand trine is going to do, especially because it's combining the energies of Mars, which can be very resolved, and Pluto, which can be absolutely deliberate in the way that it's going to do something, it's going to give you the force and it's going to give you the ability to get done the things that you want to get done. So what's been going on with you is that recently you have been amazingly tolerant, sympathetic, accommodating, and just. In other words, what you've been experiencing recently in your life is a lot of outrageous behavior that's going on around you that you put up with, that you've tried to show your sympathy towards. In other words, extending sympathy. The person's being outrageous because they've gone through difficult times or something along those lines. You've been patient and accommodating. Maybe they'll get over their bratty behavior and start to see reason. And you've been just. You've been fair about things. But what's happened is that a person or the people around you have continued to be outrageous or demanding or not understanding the seriousness of a situation that you are committed to. So what's going to be happening with Mars in Gemini, which is also trining Pluto in Aquarius, both trining you, Libra, by sign, is that you must now put the focus on what is best for you and what is best for you in the long term. So when I talk about what's best for you in the long term, it's taking an action that you're going to be following for a period of time. It's not going to be a couple of days. It's not going to be a quick fix. It's not going to be something where you take over the reins for a while and then in a week or two pass the reins back. No, you're focusing on what is best for you in the long term. And then on top of that, you must pursue your objective with the unblinking gaze of a heat-seeking missile. And that's what Mars, when it's trining, does. It focuses on its target, and it will follow that target no matter what. And as a Libra, you need to do the same thing. Now, this is not a question of willpower or making up your mind. Your mind has been made up and the willpower is already there. What it is you being very clear on what you want. And if that means that you have to see things from other people's point of view, listen to all sides of the story and things like that, that's fine. You're a Libra. This is how you reach good judgment. Libra is about judging things. That's why your symbol is the balance. You're always balancing the two sides of the story. But you're not doing it to endlessly balance. You're doing it to arrive at a judgment. And so this is a period of time in which you're making a judgment of what it is that you want to pursue. You are going to be putting your interests above other people's interests. And that might be for yourself, or that might be for the rule of law, or that might be in service to what you think is the right thing to do. So this is a very solid and a very serious time for you, and a period of time in which you can get your way, basically. Now, it's true that one of the interpretations of Mars in Gemini can be travel, because it's moving through that part of your solar chart that pertains to travel, especially traveling long distances. But what's also going on here is that the Mars in Gemini in this particular position of your solar horoscope can also bring wonderful opportunities, particularly an opportunity to become a bigger fish in a larger pond if you truly want it. So you probably have reached a place of prominence or status in doing what it is that you are identified with doing, or what you typically do, okay? You probably enjoy certain accolades and recognition and things along those lines, but you may get an invitation to go to a larger pond. You won't be the big fish that you are right now, and that can be a little bit like, I don't know if I want to do that type of thing. But Mars loves a good challenge, and when it's forming a trine to you, it's encouraging you to do this. It's showing you how you can improve yourself and your life and the lives of the people around you. So this period of time, when you've got this very strong Mars and Pluto energy, which is July 4th and 5th, and it's going to last all the way to July 26th, this period of time is not a period of time for you to deliberate or to procrastinate or to overthink things, because you're at risk of losing out on what's available. In other words, there's an urgency to Mars. You have to act now if you're going to act to Mars. That's what it does. And with it being in Gemini, it's going to show you how you can do this, and it's going to lead you to do this. So there is indeed a path that is opening up before you, and all you have to do is embark on it. If you're born under Scorpio, or you have Scorpio rising, you need to distance yourself from a very intense situation that's going on in your life right now. This probably has to do with someone who's very close to you. Maybe it's one person, maybe it's a couple of people, and they're in the middle of struggle. They're struggling with something. Maybe they're struggling with an aspect of their personality, or they're struggling with getting over something, or maybe life has simply just been a struggle for them, and it's been very difficult. And being a Scorpio, you care about that. And you care about it for two reasons. The first is when a Scorpio gives their love to someone, that's sacred and it's lifelong. It's not something that's done flippantly or pinky promise or anything along those lines. Scorpios don't always give that love and allegiance easily. In fact, they almost never do. In fact, I don't think they do, period, all right? And when they do it, the expectation is that it's lifelong. Now, do Scorpios want something back for that? More often than not really. I mean, other than the person being in your life. So Scorpios love to have a beloved. They love to have a friendship that they cherish, someone who they adore. And Scorpios can be very adoring and very and wonderful and intimate and in the person's corner. So there's a very strong water element that takes place here. You're born under a water sign, so your emotions and feelings are very powerful and they're very sacred to you, and you share them. Even when you know that you shouldn't, you do. If it's someone that you're drawn to or someone that you care about, you will literally go through hell and high water for that person. And when you combine the fact that Mars and Pluto are the two rulers of Scorpio, this is something that you probably do on a semi-regular basis. I'm not saying it's a regular thing like catching a bus, but you do it on a pretty semi-regular basis, or at least you've been doing it now. But this is a period of time, and this is what Mars and Gemini is trying to show you here. And the message may not be coming through clearly because Gemini forms a natural quincunx to the zodiac sign of Scorpio. What that basically means is that Try communicating to someone on a mobile phone and the signal keeps going out. It's frustrating and you keep pressing redial and like, can you hear me? And they're like, I can hear you now. And you're like, okay, what I was in the middle of telling you is like, wait, no, can you hear me? The signal's dropped again. Okay, so this is what happens with a quincunx. It's like the signal keeps dropping as you're trying to get through this message or this communication. And where other people would be kind of like, oh, I think I'll put it in my pocket or it's not going to happen or something like that. What happens with the quincunx is that you keep pressing redial in the hopes that it will finally get through. And so what's going on here with the planets is that the signal is failing and the message isn't getting through, but it gets through. And because it got through, you're going to try again. So this is what happens. There's a frustration in a quincunx type of relationship. How this translates to you is that a loved one is going through a difficult time and you want to be there for them. You want to give advice, be support. Hell, you even want to fight the battle for them. Okay, you're a Scorpio and you got Mars as a ruler. You're like, one side, loved one, I will fight this battle for you. All right. And what Mars and Gemini is trying to communicate to you is that your loved one or your beloved or the person who means so much to you needs to fight their own battles. And this is a big deal. I mean, oftentimes when we hear like, oh, they need to fight their own battles, it's like, you need to man up or be in your own corner or fight your own battle or something like that. We think of it in that regard. But someone can be fighting an emotional battle or a physical battle, and they're very alone with it. And it's tearing your heart out that they're going through this. And you want to fight for them, but only they can fight it because only they can make the difference in their own life. So basically with Mars here, my feeling is you've done everything that you could to help this person out. But basically right now, only they can make the difference in their own lives. Either they have to rise to the occasion to fight their own battle, or they're in the battle of their lives psychologically or literally, or spiritually, or financially, and you can't do it for them. They have to do it for themselves. Now, this may lead them to do things or to make choices that you would advise against, that you don't think are a good idea, or you've got a better plan and you've got a better way. And what you need to do here, and what Mars is trying to communicate to you with its passage through Gemini, is let this person alone. Let this person make their own decisions. Let this person find their own way. Now, it could be that you see them making a boneheaded mistake and you want to save them the trouble or the aggravation or the grief of that mistake, but it's this person's life. And it's this person's life to make that mistake. And that's how they grow as a result of it. That's how experience, even if it's a bad experience, can be the best teacher. So that might be part of what's being communicated here. The other thing is that you may actually be, without knowing it, getting in the way or becoming an obstacle. You might have such a solid idea of what this person should be doing, and it would be great for you and even people who think like you, but this person isn't you, and this person may not think like you. So either they don't get it, or it's not really ultimately what they want, or it just might not be relevant. It might be something that's great for you to do, but just because it's great for you to do doesn't mean it's great for another person to do. And that can be hard, especially when you're dealing with an intimate relationship, because you feel so close to someone. You know that you're not one person, but you're very close to someone. And so the things that work for you should work for that person. But the Mars in Gemini is here to say they don't, and that this person needs to find what works for that person. So that's a bit of a challenge that you're going to be going through for the next 6 or 6.5 weeks. And I think the best way to deal with that challenge, there's no resolution or answer here. We're talking about a quincunx, so it's a work in progress. But the best way to deal with it is to be in the person's corner, but let them do the work and let them make the choices. Interestingly, what I also see happening on the flip side of the coin of this is that Mars in Gemini, because of its trine to Pluto, you've got your two ruling planets, Mars and Pluto, forming a trine in the sky during this period of time, especially around July 5th. You've got this trine support that's taking place. Mars and Pluto are very much working with one another to help you help yourself. And that's interesting because you might not have been thinking of yourself too much recently. You might have been more involved with what this person was going through that I've been describing, or the situation that you've both been struggling with. And you might have just neglected yourself or put yourself on the back burner, or I'm strong enough to do this. It's her or him that needs my help. They're not strong. What Mars and Pluto are going to do by trine, especially around July 5th, is that they may be bringing into your life someone who's here to help you with your own situation. And your feeling might be like, I don't need it, or I'm fine, or I'm strong, or I'm tough. I don't need this. But there may be someone who's coming into your life who may be saying, actually, you do need help. You do need support. You've given a lot of yourself. But it may also, because we're talking about the solar eighth house here, this person might be coming into your life to help you improve your own financial situation. That maybe finances have been stressed or drained in some way, or maybe you've simply been on automatic pilot about finances, and this person is coming into your life to help show you how you can improve this. But what it gets down to is that the money in your life, and Scorpios will spend anything to help someone that they love and care about. The money in your life is also meant for you and not for people to live off of you. And so what you're being shown here, maybe it's a financial decision you have to make or a problem that you're dealing with. What you're being shown here is that it's time for you to take care of yourself and probably even your own finances, because the eighth house can be very much associated to finances. And what the trine is showing you is that you need to use this money for yourself. You need to own it. You need to say that this is mine. This is meant for me. And if you do that, then the money will grow and flourish, especially because it's been neglected. But if you don't do it, if you just automatically give it to another person and you see this advantage or this reward or bonus in terms of like, okay, I'm going to give this person more money or something like that, then nothing will come of it. So it's a strange message that I'm getting with you vis-a-vis this, but the money that you've been spending on others needs to be spent on yourself. It's like you've starved yourself and now you need to eat. And so there might be a resistance to that, but you need to eat in order to be healthy. And the money in your life needs to belong to you and needs to be caring for you in order for you to be healthy. It's not really the way that we might think of money in this regard, but for you, this is the way that I would invite you to look at it, because this is where the Mars in Gemini is showing you where you need to take care of yourself in a situation where you feel the most selfless and the most self-sacrificing. And it's saying basically, you don't have to stop being selfless or self-sacrificing, but you do have to take care of yourself too. And if that message is coming from not only one, but both ruling planets, that's a message that's worth listening to. If you're born under Sagittarius, or you have Sagittarius rising, you may be experiencing a lot of friction during this period of time that Mars is traveling through your opposite sign of Gemini. This is the part of your solar chart that pertains to partners or close companions. And Mars here may be signaling that partners and close companions are delighting in being provocative, in being contrary for contrary's sake, or working your last nerve. When Mars is opposite you like this in the sky, it's like the child that says no to everything. What is it, the age of 2 or 3 where the child learns to say no? And so when you say, well, what about this or what about that? The child's like, no, no, no. And maybe even giggling and laughing. No, no, no. Okay, so it's just going to be something in which you're getting a no or resistance or disagreement on everything that you introduce. Okay, so it might start being somewhat amusing in some sort of way, but when the child keeps repeating, no, 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 it's really annoying. Okay, so you're kind of like, stop it, or now we have to get serious. And with Mars here opposite you, it doesn't stop, it continues. Okay, so you're going to experience those not so easy sides to live with Gemini. Geminis can be provocative, especially when Mars is passing through the zodiac sign. Geminis on a bad day love to be contrary for contrary's sake. If you say red, they say blue. If you say yes, they say no. If you say I want to be closer, they're like I want to be further. And they're just going to be contrary for contrary's sake. And this can get really annoying. And this can be troublesome in a close partnership or companion. You're supposed to be on the same page, right? You're supposed to be in one another's corner or wanting the best for one another. But this isn't what's going on right now. What could also be going on with Mars in such an opposed or adversarial place, polarizing place might be more like it, is that you might be dealing with people in the general world who might be duplicitous or sneaky or looking to pull a fast one. So these qualities are coming out. Mars takes on a more negative or more even attacking type of attitude when it is opposite you. And you might be sort of like, okay, how do I live with this energy? I mean, is my life just going to be an unruly hell for the next 6 to 6.5 weeks that Mars is traveling opposite me in the sky? And the answer might be yes, but there's a little bit more going on than that. Mars is a more complex planet than we tend to regard. Mars was named after the Roman god of war, and so it's associated with conflict and argument and confrontation and maybe even assault and attack or taking things away from someone else. Things that might go along with a war god, someone who delights in chaos and destruction and things like that. But Mars has a greater purpose to serve in a horoscope, and it's not just burning things down to the ground. Mars' purpose in a horoscope is to get you what you want. If you say, I want that, Mars is going to say, sure, let's go ahead and get it. Come on. And if you're like, yeah, let's go get it, then Mars is great. It's eager. It's an eager puppy. It's a dog that's straining at the leash. It wants to make as much ground and get to where it wants to go and pull you along with it. All right. But if you're kind of like, I don't know if I really want that, or I don't know if I really want to work for that, or maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I was dumb to even like want such a thing. It was probably a big mistake. Then Mars is like, what's up? I thought you said you wanted this. And you're like, well, I don't know if I really, really want this. And Mars is like, why don't you want it? And maybe you're like, well, don't talk to me like that, Mars. Maybe I can change my mind or something. And Mars is like, no, you can't change your mind. You have to want this. Okay, so Mars wants you to give it direction. Okay, Mars's job is to get you what you want. And it can be want to a degree, but it really comes to life with getting you what you want. That's what it's here to do. And that means that you have to give it direction. You have to stand by what you want. You have to stand by your desire. Now, you can change your approach or your attitude or the way that you do something. You might desire something just to spite someone. And so that might have to change. You might end up seeing like you desire something to spite someone and that wasn't really what you wanted or desire, so stop it. Or you might like desire something in spite of someone, and that means you need to be in your corner and going after it. And that's more what Mars is into. Now, if we own our Mars, okay, and again, Mars is often associated with anger and being angry and assaulting people, but as I said, there's more to Mars than that. If we own our Mars, then we own wanting something. We own making something a priority. We own command. We own authority. We own don't mess with me. We own don't treat me like that. Mars is not going to countenance a victim. And if you own your Mars, you're not going to be a victim, no matter how outmatched or how outgunned you might be. So when Mars is opposite you, It's trying to get you to own it, but it's opposite. It's as far away from you in the astrological chart as it can possibly be. And so it may act in a way to get you to be more Marsy by provoking you, by making things difficult, by picking a fight. It's not doing it to defeat you, although that might be your experience of it. It's actually doing it to get you to fight back. It's doing it to get you to be more commanding. It's doing it to get you to express and act on willpower. It's doing it to get you to not take it anymore. So this period of time might be a period of time where you experience people as really being obnoxious or difficult or maybe even demanding or contrary for contrary's sake. And what Mars is trying to do is to get you to say, knock it off. Or if it's a 2-year-old, it's time for bed. To take charge of the situation. This doesn't mean that you scream at the 2-year-old. It doesn't mean that you lose it or anything like that. What it means is that you take charge of the situation. And taking charge of a situation, if you've ever watched like a dog with a puppy and the puppy's like pulling at it and being obnoxious, and the dog just like raises an eye and looks and the puppy's like, okay, stop. That's what Mars is trying to get you to do. It's trying to get you to be like, knock it off. And so this is what's going on during this period of time. So it's you moving out of maybe a victim position if that's what's come up, but it might also be you moving out of the scapegoat position where you're getting stuck with the blame, or you're the person who is the culprit or the villain of the piece or something along those lines. And it's moving you away from you having to explain yourself or to justify yourself. And it's moving you towards communicating from a place of ownership, like, why am I the villain of the piece? I mean, Gemini isn't going to be like, I'm not the villain of the piece. Gemini is going to be like, why am I the villain of the piece? And why does there even have to be a villain? I mean, one of the wonderful things about Gemini is that it will question the words that are being used. And it's doing it in an effort to have a conversation, to find a meeting of the minds, which is ultimately what Gemini is really about. It's trying to create a meeting of the minds here. And so this is what the Mars is getting you to do by taking charge, command, and to get to a place where you have a meeting of the minds. This may bring up what the other person has been upset about, or this may bring up the fact that the other person's just being obnoxious and maybe it's time for them to knock it off. Or this may bring up you showing an engagement that the other person felt like you weren't showing, which is why they were being so provocative and obnoxious and all those sorts of things. So ultimately what's going to come as a result of this, and this is pretty much because the Mars is sextiling Neptune in Aries. Aries trines Sagittarius. You're both fire signs. And so there will be a meeting of the minds and understanding where the other person's coming from in a way that is ultimately being done in a Sagittarian way, which is friendly. And which is also really wanting to learn. Sagittarians believe that all experiences are teachers and that we learn from our experience, that there's no greater wealth than the wealth of experience. And so what the Mars in Gemini is giving you an opportunity to do is to communicate in a different way that you normally would, to recognize that someone's trying to get a rise out of you, but maybe they're doing it because they're trying to get your attention or for you to take them seriously or to think in a way that you had dismissed or to be around when you've checked out, that these might be the things that are going on. And so when you become present in who you are, when you take command of your part of the situation, that doesn't mean that you're in command of the entire situation. It means that you're here and you're involved in a conversation and a give and take. And nothing but good can come as a result of that. Obviously, it would have been nice to have found a nicer way to reach that. But like the 2-year-old that says no or comes in the middle of the night and are you awake when you're obviously asleep? This is what Mars and Gemini is trying to do. So the attempts to do this may be clumsy and klutzy and annoying, but the heart is in the right place. And the result will ultimately be better communication and a closer type of relationship. If you're born under Capricorn or you have Capricorn rising, Mars will be moving through a part of your solar horoscope that deals with work and service. Mars rejoices in this part of a solar horoscope. Mars rejoices in what we call the sixth house, because Mars loves to work and to work hard. And people born under Mars or have Mars very strong in their chart, they're not Venusian, okay? They're not like reclining on the chaise longue and pointing out to the gardener where things need to be placed, okay? They're the person who's picking up those heavy trees or plants or whatever, and they're moving around the garden and they're planting them. They're the person who's doing all the activity. They're the person who's doing all the work. So Mars, when it's in its joy, loves to work, and Mars, when it's in its joy, loves to be of service. Now, we might not think of a soldier as being someone who's in service. We think of soldiers as people who go and destroy things and ruin things and take over things. But soldiers actually have that side to them, that heroic side of being of service to their country, of being of service to people in distress, of being of service to people in need. In fact, that chivalric code is what transformed thugs into knights. So people who went and rescued damsels and dudes in distress, people who fought those battles, people who came running to answer the call of urgency or an emergency that other people were running away from. There's a disaster, people are running away from it. It was the Mars energy people who are running towards it to see what they could do to help, to see how they can rescue, to see how they could salvage the situation. So Mars in the sixth house is that kind of service, and it's also that kind of work. It's the labor, it's putting in the effort and sustaining that effort. A soldier has a job to do, and when they do it, they're like a machine. They're not thinking of their own personal interests. They're a machine. They're acting against their instinct, which would be to actually flee. They're running towards that situation, and they're working hard. And that work and that sacrifice that soldiers make, especially when they've been in combat and have been in difficult situations in combat, that can scar them for life. And that can move them from a position where they were fighting to a position where they're dependent or they're damaged. They've given up their life in that kind of a service. So work is something that a Mars in the sixth house takes seriously. It's the job that you do, and you need to do the best job that you can because people are relying on you. You're there to protect, you're there to seize, you're there to uphold or enforce, you're there to act from a higher principle. One likes to think this, or that's at least the archetype of a good soldier, is someone who does that, fighting for truth and justice and for equality and for the good of the people. Now, I'm not saying that you have to run out and enlist, or that you'll be doing this during the period of time that Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Gemini. I mean, some of you might, but what it's really about is the idea of taking work seriously and the self-sacrifice that goes into that. Now, is that something that a Capricorn or Capricorn rising has to be sold on? Not at all, okay? Because you're an earth sign. All earth signs are workaholics to some degree, but Capricorn even more so, because it's the idea that your life depends on it, on other people. There are going to be no-shows, or they're not going to come through in the way that they should. You can only rely on yourself, but it's not just relying on myself and being self-serving. It's I rely on myself, and as a Capricorn, other people rely on me as well. And taking that very seriously, the idea that other people are relying on you. And so a lot of your energy can go into work. That work might result in you making millions of dollars, or that work might result in you making hardly anything. But if the work is the thing that you've identified with, either because you love it or out of necessity, you have to work this job, because if you don't, the people who are depending on you aren't going to be housed and fed. These are things that are going to be very strong and important for you. But what can happen when we have this kind of focus on work is that there's that phrase, workaholic. Work can become an addiction. Part of it might be out of fear or anxiety. Part of it may just be necessity. But a lot of it can be that the work takes over, and that's the thing that you focus on in your life. And maybe you don't focus on other things, that other things aren't as important as this. Work always comes first. Maybe work comes in front of family. Work comes in front of a spouse. Work is the thing that, even though you tell people I'm coming through and I paid for this roof over your head and things like that, underneath, work is really the purpose. It's really the thing that keeps you going. But there's different types of purposes. You can have a higher purpose where you're serving all of humanity, or you can have a Sisyphean purpose, which is, if you're familiar with the myth of Sisyphus, he was condemned in Hades to roll a boulder up to the top of a hill. And it was a very heavy and a very big boulder. And he would exert himself. And this is Hades, so you live forever here, right? It's an eternal punishment. He would exert himself to push this boulder to the top of the hill. And no sooner did he get to the top of the hill than maybe sweat fell into his eye, or a fly buzzed around his nose or ear, or he lost a grip of the boulder and it would roll back down the hill again. Or maybe he got to the top of the hill, looked around and said, looked back at the boulder and it was at the bottom of the hill again. So, I mean, the curse was the boulder was always going to end up at the bottom of the hill rather than the top, and that he had to roll it back to the top again. And sometimes a job can be like that, that no matter how much exertion, how ingenious, how inventive, how much effort you put into pushing that boulder up, it ends up back at the bottom of the hill somehow. So the message that Mars in Gemini in your solar horoscope is trying to communicate to you is that, okay, you're working hard. Okay, right on. Mars is in its joy in the solar sixth house. But the question is, are you working smart? Now, that's a question that gets asked a lot, but it's a particularly pertinent question for you because Gemini is about smarts. It's an air sign. It's intellectual. It's inventive. It's spontaneous. It's a sign that loves a good riddle, so it could solve it. And so it's about smarts and using your smarts. So right now, you're working hard. There's toil, there's labor, great. But are you working smart? Are you directing your energies in the most effective and even economic way? And this is something that's going to become very pertinent as Mars gets closer to its sextile to your own ruling planet Saturn on July 26th, all right? And what you're going to be able to see is that the way that you've been working by focusing on this Sisyphus boulder, okay, the way that you've been working has actually been narrowing your scope. It's been narrowing your choices about work. You might be saying, this is the way it's always been done. Or if someone's like, hey, did you think about this other approach? You might be like, I don't have time for that. I'm a Capricorn. I need to press my nose to the grindstone. And this is a way in which work, ironically, can become a form of procrastination. I can't make these decisions. I can't examine this paperwork. I can't take a look at this. I can't entertain my options because I've got deadlines and a job that needs to be done. And I'm like a slave to that. Success rewards people who are prepared to raise their sights. And that's deliberately worded, who are prepared to raise their sights. If you don't raise your sights, if you're always looking at this rock in front of you, this grindstone, then it's not success, it's tedium. And you're not looking up from it. That's where you're looking. And so that's what you get. So there's a mindset thing that's going on here. But if you're prepared to raise your sights and to fulfill the purpose for which your special talents have been given to you, this is something that moves you into the area of success. Success isn't just driven by ambition and drive and like, I got to go and succeed and all these sorts of things. Success can be about raising your sights and asking, where am I going with all of this? we all have special talents and skills and abilities. And some of them might be really outstanding and some of them might just be specific. But we all have that. And if we can recognize that that special talent or ability is connected to a purpose, then that gives us something to improve upon. That gives us something to live for. That gives us something to raise our sights and want to be more successful. It's funny, it's not really about making the money. It's really about utilizing your talents to the best of your ability. If you're talented at, I don't know, running track, all right, and your body hurts when you run track and your muscles, whatever, and things like that, that running track is that thing that you live for because you want to be the best at it. You have a talent for it. This is what makes an Olympian. And Olympians spend the rest of their lives nursing those, or managing, it's not nursing, managing those injuries that they got, that sacrifice of pushing to the limit. But they lived the full life of that talent, of that ability. So when you raise your sights, you bring in this notion of success. What Mars in Gemini is also trying to communicate is that if you want to be successful, you want to raise your sights and live on a higher pursuit of what your natural talents are, you have to be willing to try out new things. And this is the work smarter part. It's not work smarter because you're working like a dumb lug. It's work smarter like utilize your full wheelhouse of talents and skills. If you're perfecting something that you love to do, then perfect it by playing around with new approaches or techniques or mastering different, I don't know, forms of technology or aptitudes or something along those lines. What I think I'm getting at here is that Mars in Gemini is an experimental Mars. Geminis love to play around with things. They're the kid that pushes all the buttons on the remote because it made things move around. And meanwhile, it's like, we were watching a show, honey. But the thing is that poking, that prodding, that playing is experimenting. It's not just to be obnoxious. It's experimenting. What happens when I do this? What happens when I do that? So if you can embrace the spirit of experimentation with the work that you're doing, you may find that you're not doing this anymore, that the blinders have been expanded, your margins have been expanded, you're taking in more of the world, you're taking in more options and abilities, and you're discovering, and you're becoming better through discovering and experimentation. Because at the end of the day, not only is that Mars in Gemini experimental, but it's a mindful Mars, it's a mental Mars, it's a brain active Mars, and it needs to be engaged, So it's not just, your muscles aren't just the muscles of your strength and ability and pushing through, but you also have a muscle in your mind, and your mind needs to be exercised. Your mind needs to be engaged. And this period of time when Mars is moving through the zodiac sign of Gemini is the perfect time to do it. If you're born under Aquarius, or you have Aquarius rising, Mars in Gemini is going to be a terrific period of time for you. Now, it looks like you're generating a lot of interest in your life these days, and you need to cultivate it. Now, the idea of an Aquarius cultivating interest is almost an anathema to your sign. Aquarians tend to think more in terms of the group and in other people than they do in terms of themselves. Now, that's not because Aquarians are particularly selfless or anything along those lines. One could even argue that Aquarians are like border collies, that there is an instinct in them that makes them herd people. That's H-E-R-D, herd people, that without them, the people in their lives would just like meander in a kind of like chud cooing way, like a goat or a cow or something like that. And it's the Aquarians that sort of bark and nip at the heels and herd the people in their lives, that they help make the group function. Aquarians take a group of people seriously because Aquarius is the zodiac sign of society. And Aquarians believe, whether you're born under Aquarius or you have Aquarius rising, that society is only good as the people in it. So each of us have an individual responsibility. Each of us has been assigned an individual task to come together and make society a better place. And that is going to require a lot of communicating with one another, listening with one another, agreements, disagreements, coordinating. This isn't meant to homogenize. It's meant to give everyone the freedom of their lives, the freedom of their expression, but to also ensure that the freedom of their lives and the freedom of their expression doesn't trounce on the freedom of other people's lives and expressions. And that's quite a tall order if you think about it, but it's one that's very important to people born into Aquarius or Aquarius rising. Freedom isn't just a generic thing that's given to everyone. Freedom is there, it's a privilege and a birthright, but you also have a responsibility with your freedom not to take away the freedom of someone else, not to cause harm, not to oppress, not to get grabby and shove the other person to one side. And so this is why Aquarians resist the idea of calling attention to themselves. It's really about everyone as a group, all the voices being heard. It's an Aquarian that's going to say, okay, we heard a lot from you, Charles, and a lot from you, Tom, but Betty, we haven't heard anything from you. What do you have to say, Betty? Okay, the Aquarius rising is going to ensure that Tom doesn't manspread over the entire conversation and that Betty has something to say, or Raymond, or Loretta, or Lindsay, that everyone is being heard, no matter how accurate or expertise or crazy and foolish or silly. Aquarians see genius in everything. And in fact, they have a tendency to mistrust the genius of people with too many credentials or letters behind their name. They will always believe in a sort of hard to describe or pin down kind of genius. They're always interested in what other people have to say. So you're generating a lot of interest these days with your actions, with what you stand for, maybe even the role model that you provide. And as I said before, you need to cultivate this. This is something that really began when in earnest, when Pluto entered your zodiac sign last year. It might even have begun in the early 2020s with Saturn going through your sign, but it's really came together with you with Pluto moving into your sign and Pluto sort of changing the elemental flow and the makeup of the heavens. So you're in a position right now with Pluto in your own zodiac sign to really win people over to your side. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean your side of the argument or your point of view, but if you're holding in your mind what is good for the society, what is good for the group of people, what is the overall good here, you're going to win people over to that. People are going to say, you've got some really great ideas, or I really feel seen and heard by you. And I really like the way that you called out to Lindsay. Lindsay was really like fading into the wall work there, but you called out to Lindsay, and Lindsay had this marvelously insane but like brilliant suggestion that she made. And let's hear it for Lindsay. So this is something that you're winning people over to your side, not because you're convincing them of what to do, but because they feel like you're onto something, that you're right. You're carrying that Plutonian energy inside of you. Pluto can give that type of energy. It can give that kind of, well, I wanted to say cojones, but it can give that kind of street cred, that seriousness of purpose, that centeredness, that when you speak, people listen. That can happen when Pluto is in your own zodiac sign, particularly the zodiac sign of Aquarius. What's also going on here is that the planets are raising you to another level. You have a lot of benevolent activity that's taking place that's helping you to express the Pluto inside of you, all right? I was going to say it's helping you to express you, but actually we're talking about it's helping you to express the Pluto inside of you. Pluto is a very powerful planet. And it's been disputed whether it's a planet or not and all these sorts of things. But what I find so fascinating about Pluto is that it's named after the Roman god of the underworld. So you think of digging into the earth to find Pluto. It's the underworld. And at the center of our planet is a dark sun. It's molten lava or whatever that holds the center of our planet together. And the heat of the Earth's core happens to match the heat of the surface of the sun. They're the same temperature. So I often refer to Pluto as being this inner sun, this hidden sun, dark sun because it's under the surface of the planet. And so we have two suns in astrology. One is the sun in the sky, the one that all the planets orbit, but the other sun is that molten core that sits at the center of all of us. And so Pluto is associated to seeds, or the seeding of things. And this is something in which the seed within you is sprouting, it's coming to life. And we carry this seed inside of ourselves, and we can be unconscious of it. I mean, how many times do we think about, I don't know, the molten core of the Earth every day? Like, do we wake up like, I wonder how the molten core of the Earth's doing today? I mean, you might if you're a geologist, but if you're a typical person, you don't really think about it. But that's what the role that Pluto plays. And so Pluto's getting a lot of this planetary support right now. And what it means is that it's basically giving birth to a new you. Now, it's not like you forget that you were before or anything like that, but you're entering into a new chapter in your life. You have been basically since the early 2020s, but in earnest since 2025. You're entering into this new chapter in your life where the old is unraveling and falling apart, and the new, which is hard for you to describe or explain, is emerging. And that's where you should be. Anything that's new should be hard to describe or explain because there isn't the language or the concepts or the symbols for it yet. There's the instinct, there's the knowing, but it's hard to utter what that's about. And that's what's going on right now with the planets, is that you're starting to utter or articulate what it's about. And during this period of time, July 4th, Mars will conjoin Uranus, which is one of your ruling planets, in Gemini. And then on July 26th, Mars will sextile your other ruling planet, which is Saturn, in the zodiac sign of Aries. And so what this is doing is that it's bringing two ruling planets, which are typically antagonistic. They pull in opposite directions. Saturn believes that the best years of our lives are in a golden age that disappeared long ago at the time of the pyramids, okay? And that we have to get back to a time when civilization was good and life was pure. When Uranus believes that the best is yet to come, that civilizations have done a lot of things to ruin the earth and to ruin people, but it's in pursuit of a great utopia which lies in the future. And if we can get to that future place, we can make it right. We can make the world and society right for everyone, and everyone can belong and be happy. So Saturn believes in a golden age, which is the best already happened, and Uranus believes in a future age, which is the best is yet to happen. We've gone through all these difficult things in order to get to a future which is bright and golden and good. And so working with that, two horses going in an opposite direction, trying to work with that, to understand that, is pretty much the Aquarian dilemma. But when you've got Mars forming the conjunction and then sextiling Saturn, and remember that Mars rules Saturn in Aries, this is going to feel like pieces of the puzzle are coming together. And the pieces of the puzzle are coming together not through an epiphany. It's not like the clouds have parted and now you can see what the whole thing is about. The pieces of the puzzle are coming together because of the people who are entering your life right now. Aquarius is an air sign. It's a social sign. So your greatest resource will always be your human resource. And there are people who are coming into your life right now who might be fellow travelers, or they may have ideas, or they may make connections, or they may simply believe you and have things to add to what you're trying to articulate or format. So this is good. And it's good because if you're Aquarius rising, you're social. You like people. But people born under Aquarius and Aquarius rising also tend to keep their distance from people. They like people maybe in the abstract, or they like people as a group, but when it gets into the one-on-one, people born under Aquarius or Aquarius rising can start to get a little uncomfortable with that. They feel like it's too one-on-one. And so, like it's too close. Gemini is perhaps the most intimate of the air signs because it rules over our first relationship, which is the sibling relationship. And so, because Gemini is the zodiac sign of the twins, which rules over siblings and sibling relationships, there's an intimate factor. Gemini is probably the most me-oriented of the air signs. By the time you get to Libra and Aquarius, it's more other or we-oriented. But Gemini is still in the sort of like, I've got a twin, and are they the same person as me or not me, or we have to work that out. When you have Mars and Gemini bringing in your two ruling planets, this chummy quality of Gemini comes out. So you're in a period in which people are coming into your life, but they're friending you. They want to see your chummy side. They want to see your letting down your hair side. And as an Aquarius, this can be a little bit challenging for you. It's like, you've got that Saturn rulership. You never let down your hair type of thing. But they want to see that. And being reminded of that one-on-one humanity in yourself takes people out of the abstract and into flesh and blood person standing there in front of you. What's also going to happen here is that you need to be more selfish in your pursuits. I know selfish is a cuss word for an Aquarius, but you need to be more selfish in your pursuits, more directed, more, this is what I want, because Mars is about getting what you want. So you need to be more, this is what I want in your pursuits, whether they're romantic pursuits, professional pursuits, or creative pursuits. And by the way, blowing your own horn during this period of time, 6 to 6.5 weeks, couldn't hurt. But this is about harnessing the people power in your life. This is what Mars and Gemini is getting you to do by becoming a person in your life. A person with feelings, a person with needs, a person who wants a chum or a buddy. Gemini, one of the beautiful things about Gemini is that it's the buddy up sign. Gemini is the zodiac sign of the buddy. And when you see Geminis, usually the arm is around the other one's shoulder or something like that. There's a buddy thing that goes on here. And this is something that's really important for you so that you can see yourself in your life, that you don't disappear or your purpose isn't abstract, but that you can see the day-to-dayness of what it is that you're doing. And this will help you to articulate and to describe and to recognize what the next chapter is unfolding in your life, what the Pluto is getting to emerge from you. Because you have a very special gift to give right now. You might not be clear on what it is or how you're going to do it, but you do. And the more that you can talk to people, the more you'll get a clearer idea of what it is. And the more that you will feel like an active participant in your own life and destiny. If you're born under Pisces or you have Pisces rising, Mars traveling through the zodiac sign of Gemini is going to be a bit challenging for you. And that's because it's forming a square to your own zodiac sign. Gemini squares the zodiac sign of Pisces, which means that you both have two very different ideas of the world and how the world should work, and neither of you is convinced that following the other one's idea of the world and the way that the world should work is a good idea. So in other words, not only do you have your differences, but you're going to stand by the way that you want to do things. I mean, people can have their differences and try to settle their differences. When you're dealing with a square, you're trying to outmuscle the other side. You're trying to one-up them. It's like two parents with two very different temperaments arguing over how a child is going to be raised. Maybe the father is like, you're spoiling the kid by making things easy and being nurturing and loving, and you're turning him soft. You got to make him do, 75 push-ups and be tough because the world is a rough place. And the sooner he learns that, the better off he's going to be. He's got to be a fighter, not a wimp. A winner, not a wimp. And then the mother might be like, oh no, you're being so mean and hard or whatever. I mean, nurture the person. Our child has a beautiful talent and needs to be nurtured and is really sensitive. And that is something that should be nourished and encouraged. And having that kind of sensitivity is a strength and not a weakness. And I think most of life is going to be a challenge, which means that in childhood, they should get all the support that they need, because that's the thing that's going to make them feel bonded and like they have a family and that like they can go out into the world and do those things. If you make the kid feel like things are rough from the beginning, then you're going to scar them and make them callous. And our child will lose that beautiful sensitivity that he has. I mean, what I wanted to demonstrate is that these are two very different points of view and that there's an argument and that they're not on the same page and that they're fighting for what's right. Some people might say, yeah, the dad's right by preparing this child to live in a tough world by toughening him up. And some people might say, no, the mother's right by giving the love and the support at a time when it can be given. And that love and support actually becomes a source of strength when they get older and go out into a world that can be rough and tough and very challenging. So this is what's happening with the square. The Mars is traveling through that part of your solar horoscope that deals with home and family. And so it's going to bring upsets in your home and your family. Indeed, during this 6 to 6.5 week period that Mars is traveling through the solar fourth house in your horoscope, might be a period of time where you see your peaceful sanctuary being turned into a battlefield. Now, Pisces has a tendency to slip away during turbulent times like these. It's like a fish. A fish can see a storm approaching, and instead of like seeing the storm approaching and going through the storm with these crashing waves, the fish just goes and dives deeper and swims under the waves that are crashing against one another and avoids the storm altogether. And this is the way that Pisces deals with difficulties. It's like, why do I have to go and face this difficulty when I can just like go deeper and swim underneath it and avoid the difficulty altogether? And some people might say, in response to a Pisces or a Pisces rising acting this way, oh, you escapist Pisces, always looking for an easy way out. And some people may applaud the profundity of Pisces, of like, yeah, why take on that struggle when you don't have to take it on? And sounds good to me, and maybe next time you can show me how to swim under those waves as well. However, during this period of time where there is turbulence in your household or in your family or in your home, you need to be there for loved ones. And that's something that you're willing to do. You're a Pisces, you have a big heart, you have a lot of love, and you're ready to be there. But loved ones aren't going to be making it especially easy for you to be there. They may be cranky, they may be argumentative, ungrateful, demanding, blaming you for the mess that their life is. I mean, things that don't really make it conducive to being sympathetic or supportive for a loved one. And this might be a very, very difficult time. And you might find in your ways of offering solace or comfort or support that you're being mocked or rejected, or, oh, is this like where you go into your like soft, sensitive Pisces self or whatever? I'm really mad at you and I have a reason to be. Like, loved ones seem married to their anger, and they seem married to their anger perhaps at you. And so you may feel during this period of time like there's nothing that you can possibly do right. And let me tell you, as an astrologer, that's true. There's nothing that you can do that's right. I mean, if people are getting angry at you this way, which can happen with Mars squaring you, particularly if Mars is going through the fourth house, then they are invested in you not being able to do anything right. So even if you try to accommodate them, and as a Pisces, naturally you would want to, they're always changing the goalposts or their expectations. Or if you have a sit-down talk, and let's say you sit down and try to discuss something in your past to explain why you are the way you are, or why this person is the way they are, they may be poking holes in it or making light of it. Or even if you do succeed in getting them to see that point of view and they agree to it, they'll very quickly find something else that they now want you to address. So you can feel a little bit like Mickey Mouse right now in The Sorcerer's Apprentice from Fantasia, that what started off as one broom and a bucket and 2 buckets of water have now multiplied into hundreds of brooms with 200 buckets of water, that the demands are nonstop, that pointing out all the things you did wrong seems to fill loved ones with a kind of exhilaration or glee or something along those lines, that there's nothing that you can possibly do to appease this or to bring it to an end. And indeed, if you look at our world, there is a lot of free-floating anger nowadays. I mean, I don't think any one of us can escape it. There just seems to be this anger and this acrimony and this sense of outrage and things being done wrong. And it's not like the world has decided that it's irreparable. It could be reparable, but what's reparable is immediately replaced with another outrage or something that's been done wrong. So what you may need to do during this period of time where you can't do anything right as far as loved ones are concerned, what you may need to do is own up to it. Say, yes, that's true, and leave it there. A lot of times when we say, okay, yeah, no, that's true, and I'm sorry, the anger level comes on down. It's not about right or wrong, or were you justified or not. It's about recognizing the pain that someone else is in. And when we recognize that, which is tremendously hard to do, when someone is just like throwing more and more darts at us and barbs and saying awful things, when we recognize that, it's like those commercials where Cindy's like really ferocious and like she's a monster and she's out of control. But what Cindy needs is a Snickers bar. And so Cindy takes a bite of the Snickers bar and is suddenly a human being again. Well, if you could follow that analogy here, when we own what we did and we apologize, like a modern day Androcles removing the thorn from the lion's paw, that you discovered that the lion wasn't a frightening beast and wasn't trying to eat you, that the lion was in pain and had this thorn. And so an apology does that. It removes the thorn. Does it wipe everything away? No, but it brings things to a sort of peace where there's relief. There's the relief of no longer being in pain. There's the relief of being recognized. There's the relief of being seen. And there's the relief of being heard. This is not the easiest thing to do when you're part of a square, because that constant one-upmanship, especially if it's a square with Mars, there's the and then type of thing. The beauty of your zodiac sign is in your ability to do that. Few things are more disarming. I don't think anything is more disarming than love. And an apology is perhaps one of the most miraculous things that has been introduced into our society of all. When you say, I'm sorry, when you lower the defenses, when you recognize how someone has been hurt, you're not the villain anymore. You're someone who understands, and that person can stop the struggle. And like I said before, not all zodiac signs are capable of doing this, but you are. And what makes this so important is because of this presence that your ruling planet Neptune in Aries has brought to your life right now. Neptune was in Pisces since about 2011, 2012 until last year. And that might have given you a more remote or at sea type of presence. But now Neptune is in Aries. Neptune is your modern ruler, and it gives you a very present presence. And Mars in Gemini will be forming a sextile to Neptune in Aries on July 4th. So you have an opportunity here to be present, not in a commanding or demanding or having to explain yourself way, but in an owning up to your part of something and apologizing for it way. This is where you take on a role that other people can model themselves after. A role model isn't a leader. A role model is a role that someone takes on, and it's done with such virtue and generosity and wisdom and goodness that other people want to emulate. They want to model themselves after that. One of the beautiful things about your ruling planet Neptune is its ability to inspire by being here and now, which is Neptune in Aries. When you show this generosity of spirit, when you show this strength of compassion in the face of someone who's decided that you can't do anything right, when you show this here, you show a way to be. You show a way for someone to model themselves after. The beauty of owning your part of a situation, the beauty of an apology, was the beauty of recognizing and honoring this other person's experience. And it also shows this person how to be, and it shows you how to be. And so this is something that although you've got 6 to 6.5 more weeks of fighting and dealing with people who can't be pleased, and 6 to 6.5 weeks of not being able to do anything right, this ability that you could show of just owning your part of it and apologizing for it will come across as a strength and not a defect. Being able to do this is a strength. Acting from a place of love is a strength. And the fact that you can do that during this period of time, that when your home reverts or returns back to being a peaceful sanctuary after having been in embattled territory 6 to 6.5 weeks from now, this memory, this understanding that you could do this, that this is a way to be, is something that both you and your loved ones will carry as a gift after Mars changes signs on August 11th.